Hi everyone, my name's Lisa Morrison. I have decided to start a YouTube channel following this COVID crisis, which has brought into sharp focus, I believe, the whole issue around mental health and well-being. This is a huge issue anyway. I'm a lived experience practitioner. I work as a lead peer trainer in a recovery college and have used services really from the age of 14. So I have a lot of lived experience of mental health challenges, but the whole narrative that has come up with COVID and looking at what's coming ahead has brought to mind a lot of things for me. And in discussion with colleagues and friends, realizing that I'm not the only one thinking some of these things. And I've thought to myself, how do we begin these conversations in a broader scale to see if there's others out there who kind of are thinking along the same way, and how do we create opportunities for more voices to be heard? It's brilliant that we have a mental health champion going to be appointed in Northern Ireland, but just wondering how we get lots of different voices heard around this. So this is one way I'm trying it. Been forced with the crisis at work to have to use video as a way for connecting with people. Very uncomfortable with it, but it's a good way to get a message out there. So attempting this. Just to say, strangely enough, finally getting to doing this today. I've tried it a few other weekends and there were technical issues and whatever. Today's the 3rd of May, and 3 years ago today I was admitted to the second treatment centre in South Africa, where I had been sent with support from my psychiatric team here in Northern Ireland, following an 8-year period of being acutely unwell, where I was in and out of the inpatient unit, had attempted to take my life on a few occasions, and ended up very heavily medicated. I was kind of treatment resistant, and under one of those kind of terms, revolving door, I have a report which says prognosis for recovery is very limited, that kind of thing. And today, 3 years ago, I walked into a treatment centre on 20 plus tablets, and I've been off everything except the occasional thing that I've needed for the past 3 years. And I had lost my job, I had lost my marriage, I had lost all hope, I had lost any sense of who I was. And 3 years later, here I'm sitting back in my family home. My husband is filming me. I have my 2 beautiful children, 17-year-old and 15-year-old, and I have a life that I never believed would be possible to have. And in fact, my family never believed would be possible to have. So that's why I'm doing this, because I'm in a privileged position. This didn't happen. I work in a recovery college, and we talk about this whole idea of personal responsibility, and absolutely part of my journey. We talk in a video this week in the college about the term recovery and why it can be a barrier, because the journey for me is more about a healing journey, because there can be a lot of we can co-opt and bring in and use the word recovery, in fact, to further alienate people. So as much as personal responsibility, yes, I had to be very much part of this process, and I've worked very hard, and I continue to work very hard. The fact is that I'm in this position because of things around me. It's because of the environment. It's because of getting access to the right help. It's because I had a family who were able to afford to pull together money in order for me to access that treatment. When I got back to Northern Ireland and I couldn't get immediate help for resolving trauma because of the waiting lists and things, there were things in place for me that were able to support me when the service can't. And we know that with waiting lists and the lack of investment, 6% of the budget we get in Northern Ireland, it's pitiful. So that's why I'm doing this, and it's really important for me to say that I read a lot of the research and evidence, so I know that what I'm talking about is not just some harebrained idea that I've concocted. In fact, a lot of the evidence out there very much fits in with my journey. As I said, I started at the age of 14 with a psychiatrist on medication, so I really do have a lifetime of learned experience of being in mental health services, obviously in South Africa and then in Northern Ireland when we came here. So I know that this does fit in. I'm not just talking in isolation. What COVID has done is it has opened up a way for us to, in my work, for us to actually work with other parts of services and have discussions with people in different areas. And what I'm realizing is that there are pockets of people out there who are thinking very similar things around the whole mental health narrative. And I'm not going into it in this video because this is just an introduction to this issue, but I feel really strongly about it. But I need to say that I'm coming from the perspective of my lived experience, because I feel it's that voice. We've got the researchers, we've got the academics, we've got the professionals, and everybody's as important as each other. It's a collective responsibility. However, I think there's a lack of a lived experience voice in terms of the way that we're moving forward with things. So that's really what this is about. And I also have to say that I'm speaking from a privileged position. I'm sitting in a home where I'm safe, where although we have issues around employment in our household, we have enough to see us through until we can get that sorted. So the financial issues. Also, I'm a white woman. That in itself gives me advantages and privileges. I've also had access to a really good education. And now where I'm sitting, I have good support structures in place. And I'm also very, very privileged because I've just recently in the last 3 weeks got access to the evidence-based and the right therapy to resolve complex trauma. I've had 5 different diagnoses over a period of 25 years or so, and it's taken up till the beginning of this year for it to be recognized that in fact what's been going on with me is complex trauma. I don't talk about myself as someone with complex post-traumatic stress disorder because I don't believe I'm disordered. I believe that the things that I've done in my life to adapt and to survive with what I have experienced were very smart, in fact, of my body and my brain and my way of being to get me through. So yeah, but that's another discussion around how we pathologize human distress, and that's a very relevant topic with COVID at the moment, where we hear cries almost of mental health crises, what's going to happen, the surge, the wave, how are we going to prepare, and of course it's going to impact, of course it is, but how are we responding to that? Another thing I'm very aware of is the voice of those who have been in services for many years. There's a lot of talk about the impact of isolation, the impact on our mental health. And I'm thinking about the people like me, and I was one of those people who was labeled as treatment resistant, revolving door, repeat offender, all the things that come with kind of those of us who are in the system, entrenched in the system for a longer period of time. And I'm thinking, how does that feel when we're responding to frontline workers, and we need to make sure that we've got evidence-based resources put in place for whatever's going to come following this. And that can be quite difficult when, and it's absolutely appropriate that happens, so don't get me wrong with that. But the thing is, what about people who have been living through traumatic circumstances for many years of their life, who have been facing domestic violence, abuse, issues around poverty? Because really a lot of the issues that we're talking about when we talk about mental health, I believe, actually come down to social issues. It's about inequalities, injustices, and those people who are going through those things and have had to survive very, very difficult things in their life and circumstances on year in and year out basis, and then perhaps end up in a mental health system because of that, because of course there's going to be a fallout, and of course there's going to be depression and anxiety, and with complex trauma there can be psychosis and all sorts of things come with that. Of course we're going to end up in a mental health system, and the mental health system is perhaps not tailored to a person-centered approach. So when you're offered a certain therapy, or you've waited so long to get a treatment, and it does come along and then you're not responding to that, we locate blame within the individuals. The cultures, the mental health cultures in South Africa and here, it's very much about we're moving towards the co-production piece. We've got a long way to go, but it was very much about a doing to approach, and we've got the answers and we will fix you. And if you're not responding to what we're providing, then really the problem is with you. And that's what I'm going to talk probably more about in my next video, is the whole issue of cultural, organizational, social responsibility around the issues that are coming up, and share with you a bit about Dr. Karen Trausman has got a piece about organizational culture being trauma responsive, trauma informed, and she talks about in this sheet of hers the values of, this is for organizations, safety and trust, relationships, cultural humility and responsiveness, behaviors, communication. Hearing lots, we think about our colleagues and how people are responding to this situation. Strengths and hopes, collaboration, transparency, connection, integration, communication, voice and choice, compassion, curiosity, understanding, and being reflective. And I think when we're looking at addressing mental health, we're asking, are things going to be in place? Well, they weren't in place before. So let's just name it like it is. Look at the underlying, the systemic issues. Of course, there needs to be immediate things put in place. But what is it for the long-term vision of having a more trauma approach responsive system? And I'll just finish with an experience of starting with the EMDR consultant to help me process the whole trauma piece. And it's been quite challenging, and I think it's, in some ways it's going to be difficult, very validating finally to feel that I'm being heard and understood for what's been going on for me for so many years. But in some ways as well, I felt quite sad because in my first session, I was in a room that I had sat in for many years as a patient, acutely unwell. I've now got a key to that room, which is a bit bizarre. I'm actually working in the service, so there is hope. And she was asking me just to look around me to see what things I could use to ground, because dissociation is a big part of complex trauma and distress in general. We need to ground and soothe our systems. We're talking a lot about this in terms of staff self-care, our self-care at home, emotional well-being. And there was nothing in the room. And I thought back to 30 years in clinical settings where there's very little. Our environments aren't set up for distressed people. And if you think about the practitioners or professionals working in those environments with very distressed people, professionals who themselves can have experienced trauma in their own lives in terms of their work, who are perhaps going home to difficult circumstances, financial difficulties, etc. What are our environments like for supporting everybody? I've sat on one-to-one observations in hospitals many years in a room. Are we training and equipping people to do some of these basic things? Yes, we need our speciality areas, but are we actually equipping people, to be human with others? And that's not just in mental health, because what we're seeing is that the work we do in the college is actually relevant across the board, because it's about how we are with people. It's about our relationships. Whether you're a carer, a person using services, we will all need to use health services at some point. This is not just located within mental health. Our well-being is a social collective responsibility. Another thing that came up in that session was that the therapist said to me, I said, I really don't understand how all this is working, but I'm going to go with it. And she just said to me, look, she says, I've seen this work, I've seen people heal, and I'm walking with you on this journey. And are we able to say, and are we trained that it's okay to say that we'll be with people on their journeys? We'll be with our colleagues, not just in a clinical setting. And the last thing, which probably people would think is quite bizarre for me even to think is such a significant issue, is that in my last session, we were talking about using smell to ground, and I love chamomile. I'm an aromatherapist. And she says, I've got some plants, chamomile plants I'm growing at home. They're going to be ready in a few weeks. I'm going to get some to you. And just that thing that here's this professional who's going to bring something from her own home, and there's not that barrier of somehow you're there and I'm here and I'm maybe a bit dangerous because I'm a patient. And was just, I thought, oh my goodness, when we start to look at our services and our organizations and cultures, we really need to just be getting back to basics of how we are with people, how we're human with each other. That takes courage, it takes vulnerability. So this is a huge issue. There are huge issues. We can skirt over, we can put in things that need to happen immediately, and we can forget about all the underlying longer term issues that need addressed. But I'm just thinking back, and sometimes I feel hopeless, helpless, powerless. I really do. And other times I think, well, how did women get their rights, get bank accounts? How did we get gay marriage? I come from South Africa. How on earth did Nelson Mandela become president of that country, torn apart by apartheid? So that started with individuals being prepared to have a voice. And it's not just our emotional health and well-being is all of our responsibilities. Social connection and working together and collaborating, and there's been some wonderful experiences of that with the crisis that I've had in my work. But how do we sustain that, and how do we bring that into everything that we do to underlie it all? So hope you'll maybe check in with me in my next video, where I think I'll be starting by talking about the whole mental health narrative. So thank you if you have listened for listening.